In 3, 2, 1. Hello, 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 and welcome again to the Sonic Host Coast to Coast podcast. I'm your host, Radrey. I'm joined, as always, by I don't know why I give you this adjective, but you're the illustrious Malzilla.
Did you miss us? You missed us, didn't you? Well, we're back. And Radri, you might be surprised considering how much when we talk about Sonic in media and movies and comics and TV shows that Sonic the Hedgehog is a video game franchise. I it's kind of hard to believe, isn't it? You know, they make video games about this hedgehog we talk about.
Why? Because you're so used to talking about comics and the TV shows and the movies? Is that why you say that?
Well, I'm just saying because we have a video game out now. Sonic X Shadow Generations is out. People are living and learning. And
So,
I'm just also trying to be sarcastic because yes, we do talk a lot about the non-side of the non-gaming side of the franchise because usually there's more stuff to talk about. But lo and behold, the game's out. We can talk about it, or I'll talk about it. Roger will ask me questions, but yes.
yeah, no, I haven't had time to play it, and there's a reason why I've been kind of like I'm not. I mean, if I wanted to, I could really push myself to play it and find some time to play it in my schedule, but I haven't been too keen with this one. But I know Malzilla's been a lot more into it than I have, so um, but I guess what are your thoughts? Do you want
I
to start off with
really
a letter
enjoyed it.
grade, or do you want to? How do you want to
Yeah,
do this?
I will. I'll skip the letter and I'll stick with the numbers. And
Going full
I'm
IGN, I see.
I'm
Okay.
going full in the IGN, and I agree with IGN. I give it a 9 out of 10, and I will defend it. You can put me on trial. They'll be like, "Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?" And yes, yes, I will. And here's why.
Hmm. Okay.
so,
Uh, yes.
you have a shoot? Ask me questions. Ask me questions.
No,
Or do you
no,
want me
because I
to?
mean, it's really just going to begin with me talking about my relationship with Shadow the Hedgehog 2005, the video game. But if you have a whole spiel to dive into,
Okay.
you
Well,
may
let's.
dive in.
I will. I will begin my pontification. Yes, so our listeners will know we talked about the Sonic side of things about a couple months ago, and Sonic Generations is pretty much the same game. There's a couple of visual improvements. For the most part, the dialogue has been slightly altered, but a lot of the meanings are still there. Some of the phrases are a little bit better. It's not drastic change. The internet was crying a week or so ago about, oh, they're changing everything, oh, blah blah blah, and it's like, no, no, no. It's all pretty benign. Again, Ian described it as him massaging the script, and that's basically what he did. Um, the levels are still the same. Planet Wisp is still annoying. Time Eater is still kind of a pain in the butt, but yeah, it's the same game, and that game in and of itself is at least an 8 out of 10 game. You tag Shadow Generations on, and this becomes at least a 9, almost a 9.5. It Shadow Gens in and of itself is great. It's not as much as Sonic Generations, but it's a lot denser. And I think it's denser, it's more focused, and I think that's why it was really really good. Like, so just kind of give, we're going to go full hog spoilers now. So as everyone knows, this story is set in within the story of Sonic Generations, as in basically Shadow gets pulled into the White Zone by the Time Eater. But the game actually technically starts before that. If you've watched all of the Dark Origins, we know that Shadow has sensed a disturbance on the Ark and has, with the help of Team Dark and kind of Gun vicariously, has flown up to investigate. Now, as we know, the threat that Shadow is sensing is the resurrected Black Doom. It's not fully stated, but it's heavily implied that Black Doom regenerated, rebirthed himself from the larva that they showed in the Dark Origins um, web series. So everyone kind of suspected that, and pretty much is the truth. So while Shadow's up there on the arc, he does the first level, and then he finds the fake Chaos Emerald from Sonic Adventure 2, makes a comment. It's like, I can even barely tell the difference, blah, blah, blah. So, if you want to play a drinking game of, take a shot every time Ian Flynn makes a reference, that's your first drink there. But then obviously he gets pulled into white space, and then he kind of meets up with Omega. The first level is the Space Colony Arc, and then he kind of traverses the little white space zone, progressing through the story, going through Rail Canyon, which I'll probably say is my least favorite of the zones. That's where he meets Orbot and Cubot. Then he runs over and does the Kingdom Valley, where he meets Big. Kingdom Valley is the best level in the game. It is so fun to do. Visually stunning. Music is great. Fantastic. From there, he ventures into Sonic Forces, aka Sunset Heights, even though technically this would be a future level for him. That's where he reunites with Professor Gerald and Maria. So if you've read Archie Sonic 171, you're going to start to see what, this is where all the beats are going, and that's pretty much correct. We'll get a little bit more on that later. But then after, you beat Sunset Heights, you also have a boss fight against the Bio Lizard and Metal Overlord. Eventually takes you to Chaos Island, where right as you finish that level, you have a little cinematic where Shadow reappears in the main white zone area and encounters Sonic, where they do a cinematic of the Sonic Shadow rival race. And you see for a moment that Shadow is going to use his Doom powers on Sonic, but he decides not to, and then gets kind of his butt kicked. And Sonic runs off with one of the emeralds. Well, it turns out Rouge pops up, and he reveals that Sonic ran off with the fake emerald, and he's going to hold on to the real emerald till he finishes his mission to stop Black Doom. Doesn't really say why he's keeping it or why he needs to keep it. I'm just assuming it's for the chaos control mechanic that Shadow uses in the game. But after you do Chaos Island, you go out and you find the Mephiles boss fight. You fight Mephiles, and then eventually you finish the game up in Radical Highway, and then put Devil Dark Doom 6 feet under, and that's the game. It's short, it's tight, it's condensed, but it's really good.
Sounds good, I guess. Let me ask you this: for like somebody who's probably never touched the Sonic the Hedgehog game before, like let's say this is their introduction to Sonic the Hedgehog is through this game. Could they actually play it and not have to have any you know,
Oh
prior
yeah,
knowledge?
it's very accessible. They kind of have some fun little, you know, comic flashbook esque to kind of the key points in Shadow's story. Um, for what essentially the second time or maybe third time or however many times, we do see the death of Maria Robotnik. Man, by the end of the year, she's gonna get shot more times than Martha Wayne. um,
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point. I probably want to bring up later. But yeah, not the Maria getting shot, but something about Shadow's story that we don't really see with Sonic at all. But
Yeah, that's been one of the fun comparisons where people have been joking around that Sonic Generations is a fun little romp through Sonic's history, where Shadow Generations is him reliving. I'm gonna relive all my trauma in about a 3-4 hour game and come out clean.
I mean, okay. Let me ask you this. I mean, you're listening to you're listening to a podcast when somebody keeps saying, "Let me ask you this." But the question
You
I
can
have for
ask
you
me
is,
all the things.
yeah, so yeah. So this is a podcast. It is just to let you know. Make sure you write that down. No. Um, for this game, right?
Hmm.
You've played Pokemon Snap, right? Or Pokemon Snap, however you
Yes.
pronounce it.
Yes. Yeah. Back on the
Are
N64.
our pronunciation people in the background? Are they in the far back? Like you mispronounced the phonetic symbol of the Japanese word. Somebody was out there just clicking how many times I say Okinawa instead of Okinawa or something, right? There's always one of those guys there. Anyway, but yes, you played that one before, yeah.
Yeah. Long
What
time
was
ago
okay?
when it
This
first came
is
out.
relevant to what this is relevant to Shadow the game. I'm telling you, this is going someplace. But what was your impression playing that game?
It was it was fine. I
I guess
mean,
for our listeners out there who probably don't know what the hell a Pokemon Snap is, Pokemon is a Nintendo video game, my Nintendo. I know a lot of people probably know. I don't need an introduction to Pokemon like this, but just to preface it with some context. Like, let's say you woke up and all of a sudden you're like, "What's a Pokemon?" Right? And that has
what's the
over
Pikachu?
yeah. At that time, there was over. I'm pretty sure when that game came out, there's about 150 characters, and the object of the game was to go around this island, and you have a camera, and you're supposed to snap pictures of all the Pokemon, right? And part of the experience was recognizing a lot of the Pokemon that were in the environment and kind of seeing them interact with their environment. So I guess for my question for Malzilla here is how did you feel when you played this game? Did you feel excited when you took some of the pictures? Did you enjoy the game? What were your overall impressions?
Well, let's dissect that. So, for our listeners who are not familiar with Pokemon, which is probably about two, but for them, um, especially when that came out. So, Snap came out what, like 97, 98
Something
by
like
that
that,
time.
yeah.
Let me look that up. I'm actually
I'll go.
99. It came out in 99. So,
Okay.
so basically at that time the franchise was pretty much came out like 6 months before Pokemon Gold and Silver. So at this time, there was literally only 150 Pokemon. The franchise was new. The anime was going crazy. The movie was crazy. So this was basically a spin-off game where you play a character who actually was in the cartoon,
Oh,
who is
really?
a
I didn't know
Pokemon
that.
photographer. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Snap is an actual character in the cartoon.
Like
And
some
so the
random
game is
background character? This I didn't know.
no, he's in several episodes. Like,
Okay. What was his
yeah,
name?
it's kind of, I think it was actually Snap. Todd Snap is his
Okay.
name.
Okay.
Todd. Todd Snap or
Okay.
Todd. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, he showed up, back in the original series. So basically he was a Pokemon photographer. So in the game, you get on this little there's about like 5 or 6 different little areas that you get in this little gondola and you traverse, and you got all these Pokemon going around, and you're taking pictures of them to get a high score, so you can, and you have to get a certain score to go on to the next level, and to get, taking pictures of certain Pokemon gives you certain scores. If they're doing something cool, that gives you mirror points. Blah blah blah. Um, if you like that kind of thing, it's a fine game. If you want something more engaging, eh, it is what it is. I mean, it's not my favorite of the spin-offs of the Pokemon game. I Never actually bought it. I did rent it though.
Yeah,
But
same here. Same here. I rented it.
it, this is like a game you would rent for a weekend and probably would never play it again. And that's about it.
Well, okay. First of all, thank you for laying into having a whole spiel about Pokemon Snap. I wasn't expecting you to say anything about it, but do you know why I'm bringing this up?
I'm trying to read between the lines and seeing where the correlation is. I think I kind of seeing where you're drawing the DNA, but I'm not sure, and I'm curious to hear what your what the connection punchline to this is.
Okay, so when I played Pokemon Snap, part of the reason why that game was a great experience was because you got to see, as I said prior, you got to see the Pokemon you knew, like you already knew who these characters were. This was a game made for people who are already familiar with what Pokemon is. So the thing that kind of really worries me about playing the new Sonic games or the Shadow games, is a lot of the games that have been coming out recently, like Sonic Mania, I guess you could say, heck, even Superstars, and I guess now this one, Shadow Generations. Uh, what came after Mania? I guess there's Forces.
It was
Um,
Mania, Forces, Team Sonic Racing,
Team Sonic
and then
Racing.
basically Frontiers.
Okay, and there's a
And
while
then
there.
there was Origins, and then Colors Ultimate, yada yada.
Okay, so the way this is marketed, the way a lot of these are being sold, or the way that I consume the internet, may tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm the only person who thinks this way. But when I'm seeing a lot of these games, I'm seeing a lot of stuff that's like, well, this is the stuff that came from the past, and if you want to fully appreciate it, you should probably go back and play some of it. But if you want some of the full experience, excuse me, if you want the full experience, you should play the old ones. But if you want to play the new ones, this is just like, yeah, as I was saying to you earlier, this is like a greatest hits album. And
It
so
isn't like a greatest hits album.
it
It
isn't?
is
Okay.
the greatest. It is the greatest hits
Okay.
album. There's no like about it. That's what I've. This has been my opinion. Sonic Generations is basically a greatest hits album. Sonic Mania is like a greatest hits remix album.
Right.
Yeah, so you're 100% correct. It is a best of album.
I mean, well, there's new elements added to this one. There's like the shadow with the wings, and then there's the squid thing, and
Yeah.
there's a couple of
So with the Shadow
remixes.
Generation, yeah, level wise, I guess let me, because I'm kind of jumbling what I'm saying is, let me
That's
kind
fine.
of form a coherent thought. Um, the purpose of Sonic Generations originally was it was the 20th anniversary game. We're here to honor the nine, basically the nine game mainline games that came before it, and we're gonna do it in a fun way by choosing one level from each game and giving it a 2D treatment for classic Sonic and a 3D, mostly 3D version for modern Sonic. So you can take classic Sonic and throw him into City Escape, or you can take modern Sonic and send him back to Green Hill or Chemical Plant. It's very kind of, it's nostalgia bait in the form. The story is very minimal. The dialogue is clunky for the most part. There's a couple scenes that probably didn't age super well that got changed. A couple of the levels, while fun in a broad sense, if you narrow it down, are kind of annoying. Again, I was reading a review of the game today from Comic Book Resources CBR. The writer was basically saying he hadn't played a Sonic game in about 10 years, and then playing Sonic X Shadow Generations kind of reignited his love for the franchise, and he wants to go back and like play all the games he missed in the last like 10, 15 years. So, but he says one thing when playing through the Sonic portion, which he really enjoyed, was that it starts off really good and then kind of peters out by the end. So like the last level and the last boss fight are kind of, they're enjoyable, but they're not as good as how it started. It kind of peaked early, if you will. Um, the shadow portion, which, well, it's kind of this weird thing where it's clearly, if you sold shadow on its own, if for as good as it is and for the length of content, I, I couldn't, I could maybe justify myself paying like $50 for it, even though in reality it's probably like a $25-$30 game by itself.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of polish. The controls, like, it has better controls than Frontiers. And it's running on the same like Frontiers engine, at least the Shadow part is.
Okay.
Um Shadow, he moves good. You kind of pick up how he operates. He's got unique move sets. How he traverses the area is fun. It's similar to Sonic, but not really. The chaos control slow time mechanic becomes pretty much a fun little way to traverse both the white zone and the levels themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a lot more character interaction. So, like, for me personally, I've always been, and chalk this up to being a Sad AM, an Archie, a comic fan, fans of these other medias. I like it when all the characters interact. In the original one, you could interact with the character after you saved them from the, being frozen in time, but they'd have like one thing to say, and that was it. And then they'd all show up at the end and say, "Go, Sonic, woo, beat the bad guy." This game does it differently because there are some NPCs in the game who, as you progress through it, they have like, they each start off with like three dialogues that you can cycle through, but they get new ones as you progress the story. Like, for example, the first person you get is Omega, and Omega has some funny things about how Shadow needs to hurry up and fix things so he can go kill Dr. Eggman. Um, he talks about how, kind of gives some hints toward the Metal Overlord Metal Sonic fight, where he says, "Hey, Metal Overlord has your bio data. You can't use Chaos Control to stop time because he has that ability as well." Whereas, like, if you're in the boss fight and you try to do Chaos Control, Metal Overlord, it doesn't affect him. He says, "I know that ability. Ha ha ha." So it's kind of a fun little, he's taunting you because you're trying to slow time, but it's not affecting him because he can do it too. It's kind of neat.
Okay.
And then, like, yeah, and then you get some fun stuff from like the lore. Like when you meet up with Gerald and Maria, they have some interesting things. Like Gerald talks about his two sons, one of them being Eggman's dad and Maria's dad, and talks about how one got into archaeology, one got into robotics, but he also kind of regrets that he doesn't really talk to them a whole lot because there's been, we find out through the game, and if you purchase the content before it on certain systems, you get the Professor Gerald journal. There's a physical version, but you can also collect it within the game. So this information isn't like locked behind a paywall. You can find it in the game, and you find some fun lore stuff. We find out that Maria has a baby sister who would probably be roughly around Eggman's age. So there might be another Robotnik running around in Sonic's world. Um, we find out, Big shows up, and, you know, he kind of talks about some stuff. Like, he asks Shadow to teach him chaos control so he can catch more fish, but then he thinks that would make it too easy.
Okay.
Um, there's a lot of Sonic 06 illusions where he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been to Soliana," and so on. So again, you start, their dialogue changes, and it's kind of fun. Like, for example, in the beginning, when you talk to Omega, Omega says, "Hey, we have to find Rouge. She's an important asset." And the way it's phrased, it's kind of like he's trying to pretend that he doesn't care about her when he's like, he's worried about her. And then when you meet up with Rouge later on, as you talk to her, she's, "Oh, Omega was worried about me. "Aw, you guys do care." It's kind of funny. Little they kind of build on each other, and again, that's all Ian right there. That's Ian's fingerprints with the writing. So that was really good. I really enjoyed that. That is a major strength. Um, and there's some fun themes. Yet again, I mentioned earlier Archie Sonic 171. If you read this and then play this game, you could say, "Oh, it's basically the same story but different." I'm sure Ian's been sitting on that one for years, and the chance like I could make one of my Archie stories basically canon. Let's go.
So wait, which story's canon now?
Okay, well, let me kind of. We're gonna dive a little bit into Archie issue 171. This is one of Ian's first
I like how you
issues.
know exactly which issue it is. Okay.
This is this is why I know too much shit.
No, I mean that's why
I'm a
you're
fat.
here. I mean, it's like if I talked to anybody else, they would not be like, I don't know, it's one of them Archie things. It was in there. It'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
This is okay. I want to say this before you get started, but like most people, okay, I have to sweat this hard. I'm not sweating you, Malzilla, not by any means. This is why you're great, and you're a great addition to this show. Please keep doing this show because this is why you're a valuable asset to the world. But everyone else acts like they're on a fucking episode of was that Pawn Stars or what's that meme where they're all like, the best I can do is give you $20, or the best I can do,
Yeah.
you know that meme? It's like
Yeah.
everybody else on the internet, or at least everyone I talk to. I mean, tell me I'm wrong, but everyone else I talk to, they're like, well, the best you can do is just read the comics yourself, or the best you can do is just Google it. You know, do you know what I mean? And it's like, finally, somebody who doesn't give me that attitude. So thank you. Please continue with that out of the way.
Also,
And
I'm
this is
gonna
a public service announcement. Anybody who does that, you need to like be kind. That's all I'm gonna say.
hashtag be kind. But also, if people are interested in learning more about the zany world of Archie Sonic
Good
and
luck.
just doesn't, well, let me say this, who doesn't really have the time to sit down and read everything, um, the YouTuber Low Art
Oh
has
yeah,
a
yeah. He does a really good review. Yeah.
yeah, he actually just posted a video on Archie's Silver the Hedgehog that's really good. He's got a great, narration voice. He explains things. It's really good. He's done stuff on Archie Knuckles. I think altogether he's got like a 10-hour YouTube series on Archie Sonic. They're in about 90-minute bursts, pretty consumable. He goes over a lot of fun stuff. He goes over character backgrounds, character stories, and kind of, connects all the tissue. It's really good. But back to the story at hand. So Ian started, I think, was like 160 or 161. Let me double check that.
I take your word for it. I don't know, man.
Yeah, in 160. That was Ian's first issue. So this is about Ian's 11th issue. So this is like the first year of Ian. So, you figure, you get 12 months a year. So 12 issues in the first year. So this is kind of into Ian's, he's starting to resort the Archieverse to kind of, while being its own thing, kind of starting to incorporate more game lore and story and to kind of write some of the ships. Like he had just killed Tommy Turtle, yada yada. He had, instead of there being like multiple emeralds across Mobius and then the other planets, he brought them all together and now there's just 7. So he's kind of cleaning house. Now during this time, Shadow was working with Eggman. Forget the exact reason, but eventually he kind of realized, no, I'm not going to work for him anymore. And what he ends up doing is he ends up stealing Professor Gerald's diary, which Eggman used to find Shadow. But instead of it being like a written diary, it's like a CD data disk. So Eggman's robots chase after him, damage the disc. Shadow bumps into Sonic, and he asks for Sonic's help, saying, "Hey, I need to get this disc. Can you help me fix this disc?" Or because it has all the answers to my past that I need to know. He's like, "Okay, yeah, sure." So they bring him back to Knothole. They plug the disc. It's damaged. They plug it into Nicole. Nicole kind of stabilizes it, and Shadow and Sonic go into the disc. This recreation of the arc, and Shadow meets Gerald and Maria. He talks to them, kind of explains, even though this is just like a data disk, apparently it's got enough knowledge where it forms consciousness for them. And he talks to them. Gerald explains why he created him. Maria says some nice things. And eventually, but the disk is damaged. And so things start deteriorating until they're basically in a white space. And, as Maria and Gerald are fading away, Shadow and Maria have a very tender moment where she basically says, "As long as you keep me in your heart, I will always be with you." Shadow cries, yada yada. They exit the computer. Shadow has his, he now knows who he is. He does his famous "I am" speech, and then eventually he leaves and will eventually join up with Gun in the next arc. So basically, Shadow gets something called catharsis. He gets to say goodbye to Maria and Gerald, and thus really putting one chapter, all of that angst that he's known for, he kind of was able to put it to bed and kind of grow from there, even though they're always going to be with him. Sonic X Shadow Generations does it similarly because here we are again in a white space outside, of space time, and versions of Maria and Gerald from before the Ark incident, before Maria was killed, are now in there too. And even though Gerald kind of deduces that Shadow is from the future, so he tries not to get Tim to tell too much about it. But then I guess Shadow tells him like, "Yeah, I know a time traveler. Nothing really changes." He's like, "Oh, well, better
Wait,
to stay on the
Shadow's from
safe
the
side."
future?
Well, let me put again, not Shadow from the future. He's referring to Silver,
Okay.
because Silver's from the future. But the Shadow in the game that we're playing as is from the present,
Yeah.
and these Maria and Gerald are from the past.
Okay.
So for them, Shadow's from the future.
All right.
Okay. So basically, as you beat the game, as you fix time, Gerald and Maria eventually fade away and return back to their time, but not before Maria and Shadow have kind of a heartfelt goodbye. And, Shadow says, "I've put my anger behind him. I'm going to fulfill your wish to protect the world." He kind of runs off and he cries.
Huh. Okay.
So the long story is Ian took a story that he wrote, like, I think at this point, like 15 years ago. I mean, this is probably,
Huh.
so let me look that up again.
Okay.
All right, yeah. So issue, yeah. This is he wrote this issue in January of 20, or it was published in January of 2007. Almost 20 years later, he's able to pull from a story he wrote and obviously reform it to match the game universe and the story, but he achieves the same thing. So, it's kind of like the whole fact that, Commander Tower is now Abraham Tower. That's a Sega canon thing now.
Right.
It's kind of one of those little fun things for all of us who've read Archie, who kind of feel like we've been just thrown under the bus and then run over a few times by Sega. To say like, "Hey, all these years that we spent invested are paying off in a way." It's
Okay.
like,
Would
yeah.
would
So
you go on?
I was just gonna say it's kind of a nice little, like, "Hey, this story that I read back in high school, it matters. It took like almost 20 years to matter, but it matters."
Huh. So you're kind of waiting for it to kind of matter or not really?
Oh no, I'm just thinking it's a nice treat for Archie fans to see a story from 20 years ago and then to get, and then in that 20 years roughly, the fandom just kind of just basically shits on the Archie Sonic saying, "Oh, it's too weird. It's not canon. It's not the true Sonic." Expletive, etc., etc. To finally say, "Oh, this story that all these people are loving right now because apparently Sonic X Shadow Generations is doing very well." They announced they've basically day one sold 1 million units, which apparently, is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
People are praising it. And at the basis, this story is an Archie story. It's different, but it is an Archie story.
I haven't
That's where
been gauging the fandom. Are people seething about this, or you have no idea?
um I don't know. I mean, I'm not actively looking for the seething fans, even just because I got
Well,
better things
usually
to do.
I'll put it this way: usually, if they're seething, they let you see them. They
Oh
let
yeah,
you see them. So obviously, nobody's
and
talking about this.
well, that and I'd almost make a fancy a bet that most people don't know it's an Archie story because again, most people what they know about Archie Sonic is like the 5 pages that constantly get overshared, like Sally slapping Sonic. Oh, see my limits right here. Some of those really funky art. No one ever reads it. They just see a
Yeah,
bad
you're right
take.
about that. Nobody does ever read it. Heck, I still
Yeah,
can't
and
get
they
past
don't.
issue 71. But yeah,
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's one of the reasons I've kind of I wish a lot of Sonic fans would open their minds to either other forms of the franchise or just other media in general,
mm-hmm.
and just see how much things influence the games, influence the comics. It's
Right,
that a lot of these concepts and ideas are not original to Sonic. They come from other things. Now, some people complain like, "Oh, back in the day, why are they basing, we have evil Sonic like the Mirrorverse from Star Trek. Well, why don't they just do something about the games?" It's like, well, there was only like one game out. And let's be honest, there's not a whole lot going on in Sonic the Hedgehog 1 other than race through zone and pop robots. And
right,
you're going to
right.
try to sell like a monthly comic book on that with basically no cast other than Sonic and the bad guy.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you sort of have to lean into things that what people are familiar with. That,
And that's one of the things, like I said, Gallagher, Penders, all those early writers in the early 90s, they all grew up in the 70s and 80s. So Star Trek, Star Wars, all that stuff from the 80s, He-Man, that's all the stuff that influenced their writing, especially in the early 90s. And then come nowadays where you have like Ian, Evan, Gigi, who, oh God, I always forget her last name. She just wrote like a 20-page special in the annual about Mimic the Octopus.
GG
You know,
Deluxe. She has an X in her name.
Gigi,
That's all I remember.
yeah, yeah. She, all these current writers, Barnes, Daniel Barnes, these are all guys who grew up on Sonic when there was plenty of Sonic to go around, when it wasn't as new as it was like 10 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can say, "Oh, yeah, I grew up on the games. Let's go, you know, I grew up with 10 years of Sonic content. Let's go," as opposed to I'm writing a game that just came out a year ago. That's pretty bare bones. Let's make an evil twin and put him in a biker jacket as opposed to a goatee.
Right. Hmm.
I'm throwing some really deep, pop culture cuts here, folks. Throw me a bone.
Okay.
But yeah, kind of tying it back to Shadow. The music is great. Like as you walk around the white zone area, there's this really cool orchestral version of All Hail Shadow playing. Like I didn't quite catch it till I started hearing the notes, and it's really good. Um, you got remix of What I'm Made of when you fight, Metal Overlord. When you fight Black Doom in his two forms, again, you get kind of the All Hail Shadow playing. So the music's great, the controls are great. Oh, and let me tell you, one of the big things that they sell this game on is the Doom powers. And, and they're pretty vital to a lot of the boss fights, actually. I really love the Doom surf ability. Just you like summon a little manta ray and you swim, you like surf around. It's super fun. It's actually it's like integral to two of the three boss fights, but it's just really fun to mess around on.
Hmm. Because based upon your reaction to this, going back to the whole Pokemon Snap analogy, um, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sensing a lot of you playing this game as, you're playing. I'm not, mind you, I'm not saying this as a negative. I'm just saying in terms of like what my relationship is, with the Sonic series
Mm-hmm.
is I'm hearing a lot of, oh, remember that. Oh, remember this. Oh, remember that. And I'm not putting this down. I'm not saying that the nostalgia ruins the experience or it ruins it for me. I'm just saying that I feel sort of like as a consumer, as a person who'd probably be playing this, I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of the important things I should know more about, but I have no familiarity with. So it sort of feels like when I'm experiencing this, through the lens of, 2024, I'm not getting the same experience of that like with somebody who experienced some of the earlier works, right? Like even if it is
Well,
2024, like me playing the like let's say I go back and I play Sonic 06, but I've never played and I have
mhm.
no idea what the story is. I'm familiar with who the characters are and where the concepts and where it goes and everything. But the big thing here is that I sort of feel like I feel like I can't fully experience it without having some sort of familiarity.
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
And let me kind of, talk about it because from a certain point of view, it does make sense because it's going to depend on what lens you look at it through, and if you're kind of by nature a more pessimist or a more of an optimist. Um, there is a lot of nostalgia. Both these games are based on nostalgia. They're supposed to, poke your member gland and say, "Remember Green Hills? Remember Chemical Plant? I remember City Escape and the skateboarding gown. I remember." That's all true. But, I've had testimonials. I'm going to throw a shout out to one of our listeners, Scurvy Pirate Hog. Hi, Scurvy. He has spoken to me and he's spoken in our Discord. Also, folks, join the Discord. That his first Sonic game was Sonic Generations. It's something that means a lot to him. I've seen this opinion from a lot of other people's too. And these are people who've come into the franchise with no real background, no real knowledge other than just knowing the name because it's a pop culture icon, and using it as kind of this is the primer. This is the catch up tutorial to Sonic. You've played this, you're gonna get a little bit of each, but it's gonna be enough to get you set up for the next thing in the future. And I think that's what Sonic X Shadow Generations does as well. Um, it very much almost feels like a sequel to Shadow 05, but it's also, I think, is something needed because just the Shadow as a character, his whole story and how Sega has treated him for the last 15 years has just been super convoluted. What they've wanted from him has kind of not always been what the fans have wanted. So, and plus, there's a lot of convolution, especially in the Shadow 05 game, with its like 10 endings you need to get before you get the real ending. And then, and then the real ending being kind of eh. But
Okay.
and then plus reading, the CBR review of a guy who hasn't been involved in the franchise for over 10 years, playing the game and saying, you know what, this is really fun. I want to go back and play these other games too, just to see kind of more of what was going on. So, yes, it does is a lot of member berries. It's a lot of nostalgia massaging. But I also think you can go into it with the barest amount of minimum and still have a fun time, because some people, they like the story, some people don't like the story. Some people, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, you know, if the game is good, I'll play it regardless if it's got a good story at night. Or likewise, if it's got a great story, I'll play it even if the controls are kind of meh. And you can kind of balance those two. But if it's a bad game with a bad story and bad controls, who's going to play it? So I think, again, whether you like it for more controls or more for the story, I think you can get a good time out of this.
Okay. Um, Now, not to be a contrarian, I know it's a terrible way to be to preface something, but I guess this is a conversation. It's a long.
We're we're
It's
covering all bases.
yeah. No, but this is my argument here. Um, Let me give you an example. One of the reasons why I'm very hesitant to play this game, and for the reason I just stated about the whole nostalgia and all the member berries and all that stuff, right? The number one reason is, okay, so I've been kind of critical on IDW Comics, right? If you've listened to this podcast, and I just haven't been too keen on keeping up with the latest Sonic stuff, particularly with the whole the Phantom Rider arc. I mean, it sounds interesting, it looks interesting, it sounds great on paper, but for me, okay, so let me give you this example. So when I started reading IDW, I started without my background. Again, I need to preface this with this so you have some familiarity, but I stopped reading Archie Sonic around issue 71, and I've never really gotten back up to that point to read over that. And I started fresh with IDW, expecting, okay, this is just going to be a reboot. There's going to be no more Sally. There's going to be the Amy arc. There's going to be Son Amy, blah, 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 blah. Of course, we didn't get Son Amy. We got like hints at it.
That's a discussion for a whole nother podcast.
Yes, that is a discussion for another podcast. But
we'll save that for Valentine's Day.
The whole big thing about IDW was, I remember a lot of people talking on the internet at that time where people didn't really know what to think of it. A lot of people. It wasn't really until like all the way to issue 50 to where there's kind of a jumping off point for some people. And I probably would be one of those people, because one of the major things that really kind of bothered me about the Metal Virus arc, I mean, mind you, I thought the story was fine. I didn't really think it. I mean, maybe it went on too long. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. I'd have to reread it to like fully be give a professional opinion about it, or a measured response, as they say. The biggest thing that kind of bugged me about it was Shadow's scene in the Metal Virus arc, because there's a big scene. Spoilers, but we're in the spoiler zone already.
And you're completely valid for bringing this up. So continue. This is good.
So when I was reading this part of the part in the Metal Virus, there was this scene where Shadow was being incredibly impulsive, where he was being,
powers run, I win.
Yeah, powers run, I win, that sort of thing. And he was just kind of being very gross at the time. And then, like, Sonic and the team.
Idiot. Let's call it what he was. He was being a prick.
Yeah, sure.
Prick.
Whatever you want to call him. But the biggest problem I had with that scene was, for somebody who's never, played because this is my relationship with Sonic the Hedgehog. It's that at that time, the games I played were the first Genesis game all the way up to like 3D Blast, I think. I don't think I even touched Sonic Adventure yet at this time because this was like 2017. I didn't really start to experience Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 until like 2021. Because I was a big fan of the whole Archie series back in the day, because back when it was coming out when it was fresh, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the biggest thing is that, so me reading the Shadow thing, I'm like, oh, is this just a Shadow thing? Is this what he does in the games? And I just remember being very confused, where I was thinking, why is he having like this huge moment? Was there like some game that led up to this point, or was there a situation that led up to this point? And that's part of like what really took me out of the experience. And so playing this new Shadow game, I'm very worried I'm going to have that very same experience. So I know you're trying to
I would.
assure me that I wouldn't have it, but this is what's in the back of my mind.
Oh yeah, and I get it. Well, I was actually thinking you were going to go in a different version,
Okay, well, what
but
do you think I was going to say?
I was thought you were going to say is like, why is he acting this way? And I was going to say mandates. Sega wanted him, and it's one of those things where the nature of the franchise has changed so much, and it is constantly changing. So it's hard. And again, I was the same way when I got back into it. Late 2019, early 2020. When the first movie was coming out. I had to kind of deep dive. Now, like, I knew enough about a lot of the modern portrayals of the characters. So when I started reading IDW, it's like, okay, Shadow's being a little bit of a dick, but that's kind of what I've heard, that they've kind of made him the Vegeta to Sonic's Goku. So okay, that checks, whatever, yada yada. But then like some of the situations was like, from a narrative point, I understood what Ian was trying to do, and Ian's kind of talked about it, because that's one of the big scenes that kind of people upset a lot of fans, and Ian kind of understood why, was that this feels out of character from what we've seen. Now, again, Ian has talked about how he wrote Shadow, like when he wrote Shadow and Archie. This is 2006, 2007. Shadow was he was kind of a loner, but he was a good guy, but he wasn't like super aggressive, even though, he would occasionally throw hands with Sonic. He was doing his own thing, but he was kind of, again, he's kind of like Batman a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But as the franchise changes, as and, it's just kind of the pendulum swing of the franchise. You know, for a while, if you flash forward back to like 2008, 2009, all the all the critics at the time, who, if they have any familiarity with Sonic, it's probably they got hooked on the Genesis version, and have had to go through these kind of 3 games of kind of these melodramas with cartoon animals. It's like, I'm tired of it. Let's go back to this. And so Sega, who probably listens a little too much to bad take arguments, from 2010 to really, just now recently, it swung the opposite direction. And now it's getting to a point where, like, you have critics saying, oh, like, I want to see Shadow. I want to see Big. I want to see Silver. I want to see Blaze. I want to see X, Y, and Z. I want all the characters, all the things. I want these super cool adventures. And now we're starting to see the pendulum swing the back way. So, but going back to what you're saying, is that, going in, trying to read it, and having a moment where it kind of just breaks the immersion of the story. I don't think this has this, because it there's enough flashbacks kind of in the story to kind of keep, if you're
Oh
unfamiliar with the
no.
character.
Okay. Go
Well,
on.
if you're unfamiliar with the character, or you're a little rusty, it does a good job to kind of keep you like, okay, this is who he is. This is what he's responding to. Okay, now he's dealing with this. And so when it comes out the end, it's like, ah, It all makes sense now.
Okay, it's not like how they did it in Frontiers, is it? Or like, or like do
No,
like the
no, it's much.
Family Guy thing. Like, remember that one time? It's not like that, is
No,
it?
no,
Okay.
no. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what your definition. Like, there's two. Like, it opens up like before you even play the story. There's an option that tells Shadow story. It's like Shadow was created 50 years ago as the ultimate life form. Blah blah blah. He was, his best friend was Maria. Maria was sick. Maria was shot. Shadow was angry. He wanted to destroy, but then he remembered. And then Black Doom came and he decided he was going to stop Black Doom and put his past behind him. But guess what? The past has come back to haunt him. Yada yada. And then there's a couple like in the beginning, and this is a scene, in the trailers where after he finishes the first zone, he kind of he sees Maria Jane Gerald off in the distance, and he thinks they're kind of an illusion, and he
Hmm.
kind of has a little bit of a flashback to basically Maria, him in the pod, and her saying, her goodbyes from SA2. Um, they're not, I thought the flashbacks and Frontiers were just, they were okay. They didn't really bother me,
Oh, they
but
bothered me, but yes.
yeah, I know. Um, I'm more forgiving on a lot of things than you are, but that's why it's kind of hard to say. It's like, well, what do I know? Does it matter to me, or does it bother me, or does it bother you? So, um, if you want, I could send you them if you'd like
No,
as a
no, no.
sidebar.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I was just gonna go into this thing where, what were the flashbacks? Where I remember playing them on stream, and I'm just experiencing these, and I'm like, ah! It really hurt me. I'm like, oh, don't show it to me that way.
I think and you want to talk about like flashbacks. Like, do you remember Sonic Prime, where they were doing like those faux like Genesis graphics?
Yeah, those are fine. It didn't take me out of it, but why? You didn't
Okay,
like
okay,
those?
yeah. I was gonna say I thought the Sonic Prime flashbacks were worse than the Frontiers flashbacks.
Okay. No, I
So
mean,
yeah,
they're
this
just credits.
I don't know. I guess in this case it's kind of a to each their own. But again, I don't think they're that bad. I think they're pretty benign. There's not that many of them, and they're only at like a couple like pivotal moments that kind of are major character moments. So it's not like, hey Sonic, remember when we did the chaos control and saved the Ark? It's more of like Maria, and then it's like Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog. Yada yada. It's I'm probably not doing its best service by just verbally describing it. It's just I think it's gonna end up something you're gonna just have to experience on your own, man, and then
All
kind
right.
of
Yeah, no, I
give
agree.
give
But
your own judgment. Because I
yeah,
think
I don't know. As you can see, I'm very hesitant because, as you can tell, I mean, I don't my time's a little valuable. I mean, this is why I always like before I go to the movies, I always like read up a lot of reviews, and I collect a lot of opinions. I'm not saying I don't want to play it. I'm not like trying to actually like you're trying. I'm not saying like you're trying to horse feed this to me. I'm just saying that I kind of want to have the full experience. So this way, it's like I don't. I've gone on record maybe on the show before to say like going back to the whole like IDW like the shadow thing, the shadow arc that bothered everybody. A lot of people like to maintain this argument of, well, so and such is out of character. Whereas for me, my sort of experience is kind of more like, now, why did they make that decision? Like, because, one of the things is like sometimes when I'm watching media, I really, there are certain times when I'm watching certain piece of media I love, and I kind of hated them, but I don't want to hate them. And so it gets to this point where I'm like, well, how do I figure out what it is I dislike about it so I can still love it? Do you know what I mean? It
Yeah,
comes
yeah.
from a place of love. It's not from a place of, you know, me trying to persecute the people who made the game. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's we all have our ways of consuming stuff, and I'll be honest with me, I kind of I'm a lot more forgiving in a lot of things. I think I do turn a lot of my criticism off when if I really wanted to, I could probably dissect it a lot more.
I mean,
But if
I could give you this example. So, for example,
okay,
I really love the first, like, maybe the first two seasons of, like, Rick and Morty, right? But,
mhm.
like, as soon as, like, they started going to, like, the third and the fourth and the fifth season, it's just obviously you could tell.
Diminishing return.
Yeah, well, it's obviously like there's somebody like churning a machine. You know, they have to
Mhm,
pump out as many episodes. And what's kind of funny is the show itself is kind of self aware that it
mhm.
knows it needs to do this. I mean, and by the time like when they kicked Justin Roiland off, I'm like, nah, I'm done. You know, it's like because to me, I'm not saying that he's innocent or anything. I'm not trying to say that like whatever is he got canceled for. I don't know. I'm completely disconnected from all of this, so I have no say in any of that. But to me, his moments on the show were kind of very much like lightning in a bottle. He had these moments where he added a lot of things to the show, where you felt like this is going somewhere. They're trying to tell you something, right? Um, that's sort of the experience I kind of want with this. You know, I kind of want this experience of me not watching something and thinking, oh, I'm watching a blue rat character who's naked, has no genitalia, that walks with red shoes upright, you know, not on all fours, and you know, and make me forget about all that and just kind of, you know, bring me into the story. That's sort of what I'm looking for. The same thing with like those first two Rick and Morty episodes or seasons was I was invested in the story. I wasn't invested in, you know, the nuance. I was invested in, you know, um, I was invested in like what was going on, what I'm seeing on the screen. You know, if I wanted to go back and sort of like, you know, take my screwdriver and pull the entire episode apart, you know, because one of the examples I've heard before, a movie or like I guess a TV show or heck, maybe even a game, maybe. It's not like a house where, trust me, this metaphor, where you go if you go inside of a house, you can really tell how the house is structured, how it was put together. Whereas like with a movie or a TV show or possibly even a game, you can't really tell what it is you're looking at. You know, you sort of have to like look at it from the outside and kind of judge like, so what is the inner workings of this episode or this movie to, you know, to fully understand how it was put together. Now, I'm not interested in any of that in the very beginning when I'm first like when we do these Sad M episodes, what we've been doing when we have some time. I first just watched the episode as an episode, and then secondly, I watched the episode as, you know, well, how did they put this together? What sort of writing beats do they have to reach? What was the main motivation to how they reached those beats? That sort of thing. So the same thing with like, you know, when I experience a piece of Sonic media, or heck, not even just Sonic, just any sort of piece of media, and I'm not having a good experience. To me, the back of my brain is turning on that says, "All right, well, get out your screwdriver. You got to figure out what's wrong here." And you know, another part of my brain is also saying, "Nah, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it." But then, like, I have the other part of my brain with the screwdriver saying, "Nah, nah, 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 nah. This is really broken, man. It's really broken. You got to fix this." And the other side is like, "Shut up. We're watching the
Your
thing."
your angel and devil are going at it. It seems like.
I don't know if I'd go as far to call we'll call him a carpenter, a devil. He's just more of, it's sort of like my brain is turned on to a point where I don't want it turned on right now. I just want to enjoy something. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I
Yeah.
can't turn it all off. And it's like, where's the off button? Where's the off switch? I'm like, Control delete this. Like, get rid of it. Where is it? And like it just keeps finding ways to like, it's like politics or bad pop music. It just finds a way to find you. Like, where'd you come from? That sort of thing. I know
Okay.
it's a long way to explain it, but that's hopefully this kind of illustrates how I feel.
Yeah. I mean, we it's kind of one of those things where it's like I think we all are kind of at one point, in media where it's like we want to enjoy it, but at the same time we're almost battling ourselves to enjoy it. And it's just kind of some things we got to deal with. So, but yeah, it's you're not alone in that thinking. I know plenty of other people who are like that too.
Okay. All right. Well,
You're
I
not
mean,
alone, Roger. You're not alone.
no, it's not that I feel like I'm all alone. The whole thing is just that I want to enjoy the experience. And it's just sort of like the problem is when you shove in, I mean, okay, I'll say this much. Frontiers was a nice release from all of this. I didn't feel like I needed to, know about too much lore or too much backstory to like fully appreciate what they were trying to do. Whereas,
You liked how accessible it was to a new person.
yeah, I
Is
guess
that?
so. I mean, it
I
was a
mean,
new
that's
idea,
how
it was a
it's
new concept. Yeah,
like. It from all the stuff you've told me in this episode and previous. It's like it feels like you're trepidatious about having to do homework to know all the stuff to know. It's like, okay, I've read years worth of Archie. I've read years worth of IDW. I've played years worth of the game. It's like you don't want to put in all the effort to do so unless you absolutely want to. Whereas like Frontiers, it's the beginning of the new age. Yes, it's built off of previous games, but you don't have to play those games to know what's going on here because it's new. It's kind of that's what you're getting at.
sure. Yeah, you could say that. I mean, any
Okay.
interpretation of what I said is correct. I mean, unless I say otherwise. um.
I have a funny meme regarding I'll send you it later.
Okay. All right. Stay tuned, folks, for a meme that's going to be sent later.
Yeah.
Uh.
Called for the people visualizing, it's a rubber ducky in a bathtub and it says splish splash, your opinion is trash.
Okay. All right. I don't
It's
know how
fun.
that I don't know how that relates to what I was just talking about, but okay.
I'm sorry, I've derailed us.
Okay. Um. Oh, you mean I think other people's opinion is trash, or my opinion is
No,
trash?
no, never mind. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm not calling anyone's opinion trash. It was just kind of a funny meme that I thought you'd get a kick out of. But
Oh no, I've seen that
but
one before. I've definitely
oh
seen it.
yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
okay.
I've seen the edge lords on the internet use that one. So, um, I've seen these things. I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about, I guess if we're gonna transition a bit here, there was a lot of hype for this game, or I guess you'd call it hype. I'm not sure if it's for the game or for the movie or it's for both, or I guess that's why they're calling it the Year of Shadow, which I think we're gonna see a lot more years of because this game is selling
Well,
very well.
well, here's an interesting thing because I want to dissect that because I think you're absolutely right. Um, but it's also kind of some things where if you've listened to Izuka-san and kind of some of the stuff he's talked about, the Year of Shadow to me feels like that was one of those things where the stars have kind of all aligned
Okay.
because it was a case of, hey, we know we're gonna Sonic 3's coming out this year. It's gonna be all about Shadow. Well, because I think if we go back to what we covered in the earnings report for Sega Sammy and kind of their goals and what they want to do is they wanted to we want to release one Sonic game a year, so we're constantly putting out Sonic content. Well, as we all know, it
Did they
takes
say
several
that? I
years to.
don't even remember. But you're probably right.
I think, yeah, it's like they want to give us Sonic content because they know right now Sonic is a hot property. They want to make the money. And they know it takes time to make video games, even though Sega's got a history of rushing out releases. Sonic 06.
Yeah, well,
But
I'm sure they're pretty aware of how you know, releasing broken games and the fans that consume them, they're very loud and they're very passionate. So it's like they're not going
and
to easily
obnoxious.
they're not going to easily forgive them, and they probably know this.
Oh yeah. But kind of going on with what I was saying is that right now, I think I might have mentioned this either in an episode that got audio cut or it didn't, but it was basically right now the Sonic movies are kind of paving the way are for the franchise, and the rest of the franchise is kind of wakeboarding along the movie's wake. Because again, the movies are the most accessible to any fan. I mean,
Right.
again, it's these are
Well, yeah, sure, maybe. I have some debate
again,
against that, but yes.
yeah. I mean, and I'm generalizing. I mean, again, these are really made for primarily
For the
the
Western
general.
world, yes, very much yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll take my L for having a Western, center of the universe POV. So shame
No,
on you,
that's a
Mal.
conversation for another day. If you want to get into it, we can. But
Okay. But again, from a Hollywood perspective, this is very much, and the success that they've been having with the movies has brought a lot of people back to the games. And since movies are probably, it's a lot cheaper to go to a movie than it is to buy a video game, even with movie prices the way they are now. So the movies are setting, they're not they're not laying the groundwork for the franchise, but they're kind of they're super successful in the comics, in the games are starting to ride the wake of that popularity. I know Sam Procrastinators tweeted today, which today being October 25th, or yeah, in the Pacific Standard Time Zone at this time of recording. He talked about how in the launch trailer that they released on Friday morning, both classic Sonic and modern Sonic were starting to have blue electricity while they're running, which and you saw that in Frontiers when he got all his rings, he kind of entered this little supercharged state, which is clearly an homage to the movies. Where Sonic when he runs fast, he's got all that blue electricity going on around him.
yeah, see, they
So you're
rhyme.
starting to
They're like poetry. They rhyme.
it's like poetry. It rhymes. You're starting to see the movies are, the games and the comics influence the movies, and then in return, we're starting to see the movies influence the games and the comics. Now, what Sega is doing is kind of creating a hype Ouroboros where we know Sonic 3 movies coming out, Shadow's coming, people are excited. How do we get them even more excited? Well, let's do a re-release of Sonic Generations and throw this Shadow campaign onto it. So it's like, oh, and then we're also gonna throw a movie DLC onto it too. So it's like, the hype wheel, just becomes like a little infinity hype. It keeps feeding into each other. So, they're very much playing off of this because I've seen a lot of fans, they want a year of Silver, they want a year of Blaze, they want a year of Amy. And if I remember Zuka saying it either in one of the interviews or the Sonic Central, he says the reason the Shadow, in Shadow Generations and this whole year of Shadow kind of came to be was in a way for Sega to promote movie 3 and, get some, media attention off of it, get some, cross promotion going. So, maybe if Sonic 4 becomes a thing and, it's Amy or Silver and they decide, hey, let's, we really had success.
Yeah, whenever you
Let's
hear the
try
word
it again.
Sonic 4, my mind goes, oh no.
Oh, no,
Like,
no,
oh
no,
no, not
no.
that Sonic 4. You're talking about the movie.
I,
Oh, good.
I just gave a bunch of Sonic fans PTSD. I'm sorry. But, yeah, it's just kind of one of those things where they may do another year, but it's probably going to be a couple years down the road. And it's going to be really in conjunction with these movies. So I would say if they do another one, it's because, again, as much as I think she may show up, it's also kind of looking like she won't. So if Amy really isn't in this movie, then yeah, it makes sense for her to be, the next big character if they give her a year. Because I'm sure if she doesn't show up in this one, and if they do a sequel, she'll be in the next one for sure.
I don't know, man. I mean, actually, let's
Or
talk
maybe they,
about
or
this.
maybe,
Go
okay.
on.
I was gonna say, or maybe this movie just flops and they decide never to make another Sonic movie, and Sonic the Year of
I
Shadow
don't think
was
it's gonna
all they wrote.
flop. I think it's gonna do
Yeah, I
pretty
don't.
well. The press, the amount of time and the amount of advertising and the amount of responses they've gotten to it online, I would say this is probably going to be a relatively successful movie. It's not competing with anything big. I mean, it's coming out
Oh,
the same day as Mufasa. Who's gonna go see Mufasa? I mean, a movie about a villain that I don't know know any Mufasa stands out there unless point them out to me because I don't see people who are like, man, that Mufasa character, it was good stuff. Who says that?
not
Like,
me. And
I
I know a
mean,
lot of Disney adults, and I know a lot of Disney adults aren't saying that either. So
it's like sort of
this,
like making a
you know
movie
what we
about the
would.
villain of Mulan or something. Go on.
Well, it's funny because I'm gonna do some comparing, some contrasting. Is
Okay.
um the first Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix came out, made $1 billion. He won an Oscar for it.
Here we go. Talking
The
about
Joker's
Folie
won
à
two
Deux.
Oscars. Yeah, Folie à Deux. Kind of weird that you think about it. Two people who've played the Joker have won Oscars. Crazy. But they just put out the sequel one, and it's the reviews are it it's not making any money at all. Like,
Okay.
let me pull it up really quick. I love actually for just sidebar to our listeners. I really do love like box office numbers. I really find them fascinating. So
Sometimes I do too. So I mean,
yeah, it's
you
kind of
can learn a
so.
lot about numbers, which is
Oh yeah,
surprising.
so here's what this Joker Fouladu or has only made
This is the most
57
French we
million.
get on this podcast.
Most French. It's been out for almost a month now. It has only made $57 million domestically and has only made 192 million worldwide.
Ouch.
Yeah, and again, this is a movie that the first one made over $1 billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you're looking, it's again, yeah. The first one made $1,078,000,000, and this is not even like a fifth of that. So I kind of wonder how hilarious it would be if this Mufasa just ends up pulling like a joke or two, and it's like, yeah, the first one made $1 billion, and then the second one just made like maybe 300 million.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. I don't see how you screw up the third Shadow movie. You got a great star. Excuse me. The third Sonic movie. I'm calling it Shadow already. I don't know how you screw this up. I don't think you can. I mean, it will be a
Yeah.
success. It will make money. I mean, it's during
Yeah.
Christmas. It's a really popular time. It's not it's not competing against anything huge. So,
Well, see, here's the interesting thing, and success is also kind of subjective and relative because like for example, the first Sonic movie, the Sonic movies have barely, they've if you put Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 together, they've only made about $700 million worldwide.
Right.
You know, like number 2 made 405 worldwide, and then like number 1, and of course number 1 came out during COVID, so that kind of tweaks things, made about 319 million. So, if to be a success, and again, making, more than its previous, I think relatively speaking, it needs at least $500 million worldwide to be a successful. And I think it can make that with, obviously now with Keanu Reeves, because I think that's easily, $100 million bump, because people love Keanu. Like, here's the funny thing is, like, Mufasa could make 700 and 800 million dollars worldwide, and it might be considered not great because it's prequel. The one that before it made 1 billion, and Disney dumped a buttload of money into it, or maybe they didn't. We don't know. Whereas, like, I can't imagine Paramount dumping a crap ton of money into this. It probably has a budget maybe a little bit bigger than 2 or 1. But if it makes, say, 700 million, which I think it could, that would be considered like amazing. Like, if it made more than the first two combined, then I think we're gonna get more. We're gonna get a lot of Sonic movies down, and we're gonna get Sonic shows. We're gonna get Knuckles too. And of course, as I say that, half the audience go, "No more Wade."
Well, that's something I want to talk about, but continue, please.
Oh, that was kind of like, my point was is that Sonic 3, I'm sure the Paramount executives and the Sega executives have a, idea of how much they want to make from this. And I think it kind of based on, you know, if it keeps making, if even though it's coming out against a big, a Disney film, and it is a family film as well, and both are family films in their own right, and especially the fact that there's really no movies that come out in January now. If Sonic 3 can have a good start, if it can get like an 85 to 90 million dollar opening weekend, and then get those repeat viewings, because I know a lot of Sonic fans are probably going to see it more than once. Um, and if it does well into January, and maybe if it's still in theaters by February, it's going to be a good sign. It's going to be a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to get into it, um, what I'm kind of curious now is where do they go from here after this
In the
movie is
movies,
over? Yes. Where do you
okay.
think
Ooh.
is logically the direction they take?
Let me put my tinfoil hat on because
Yeah, this is why
I
we're
have
here.
theories.
Okay.
I have theories. I have many, many theories. And a lot of it is gonna and this is gonna seem like a bit of a cop out, is it's all gonna depend on how things end in Sonic 3.
Oh yeah, yeah. No,
Where
that's what I'm saying. Like, what is it?
okay,
What's the next year gonna look like?
okay. So let me look, I'm gonna propose multiple paths. So let's start with option A. Option A is basically it's basically, I call it the no Amy, no Metal Sonic option, where they don't introduce Metal Sonic for someone at the very end for Sonic and Shadow to team up and fight. Amy doesn't pop up. If those two don't show up, I am about 85 to 90% positive a Sonic 4 would be some kind of Sonic Heroes slash Sonic CD amalgamation, in which those two would be the next big characters. In which we'd probably see, Metal Sonic be eventually kind of be the final obstacle, and maybe he goes Metal Overlord, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. That's an option, and I think that's a pretty solid one.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also something in movies where it's not exactly called the Godzilla threshold because that's technically something different, but it is kind of
Okay.
the rules of escalation. It's
Okay.
like when you kind of how things keep getting escalated. And really at the end of the day it's power scaling. So Sonic movie 1 was basically Sonic versus Robotnik in the Eggmobile. Simple, basic, good.
Yes.
How do you top that in number 2? Well, we're going to have the Master Emerald. Robotnik's going to go super. He's going to build a giant Death Egg robot, Death Egg Robo, Egg Pawn. It kind of looks more like an Egg Pawn in the face. But it's like we're going to have the giant robot, which has always been a giant robot mech, which has always been a staple of the franchise. And we're going to bring Supersonic. We're going to have the two of them fight. Supersonic wins. Now we've introduced Supersonic. We've risen the power level to now, okay, now we're at Super Saiyan level. And of course, all our power Dragon Ball Z fans are like, oh god, he's power scaling things now. Where once we've introduced that, obviously we're bringing in Shadow, and Shadow matches Sonic. They can basically do the same thing. They both go super, they both chaos control, yada yada. You have these two. So now Sonic has fought in a giant robot. He's fought in his dark doppelganger. Where do you go from here? How do you increase the threat?
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, so you could increase it with Metal Sonic. Well, now he's got to fight his robotic doppelganger. Now, some people might argue, what's like, well, he just fought his other doppelganger. Isn't this the same story? And you could say yes and no to that. What I want is I want perfect chaos. I want we've done giant robots. Let's go full kaiju. Let's you know let's see it. That giant water Biolante. I have this perfect view in my mind of Sonic fighting chaos in the ruins of Miami. Partly because it'd be hilarious to see Miami get trounced in water, but it's got all those canals. It's got that, super metro vibe look. It would be a fun stand-in for Station Square. And yeah. You could, in theory, if you wanted to do like if you got to like 5 or 6, you could throw Silver in and then go full time travel, which might be a little much, but who knows? I mean, we are the general audience is well aware of what the multiverse is, so
Mm-hmm.
it's possible. I think they definitely want to do more smaller like character shows, and I would like to see a Knuckle season 2. I just think they need to change, rearrange some things. Less Wanda and less bowling and more Knuckles
Yeah.
lore.
Yeah. I still agree with what
Yeah,
my girlfriend said about that whole show, but
yeah. I mean, it's not it's a valid. It's probably the right opinion if we're being honest. But I think if they wanted, like, I heard rumors that they wanted to do, like, originally one of the original ideas was to introduce the Chaotix in the Knuckles show, and then the Chaotix get a spinoff. Which I'm like, okay, that could work, but there's no way you could just go, cold turkey into the Chaotix. You'd have to like introduce them. So I don't know.
hmm.
What would you like to see going forward?
Well, personally, I think, based upon who I am as a person, my opinion, I mean, I'm not saying this to be self deprecating, I'm just saying this to be honest, is, my opinion relatively doesn't matter. It's more about what does the world want, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what's the best? And Hollywood's more thinking about, well, what's the way we can make money, but at the same time, not have to spend too much money. I mean, I guess you could probably argue that this is anybody, really. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to spend lots of money to make money, right? And as we've talked prior, a lot of these characters, it's like they have licenses.
Mhm.
They have to like buy these characters to use them in the movies.
Mhm.
So based on what we've seen with the Knuckles show, I think and based upon what I know about Hollywood, or because it seems like they like to do this thing to where they love giving fans um, projects and properties that we really didn't ask for. The case in point, like Madame Web, right? Did you want a
Madam Web.
Madame Web movie?
I did not want a Madam Web movie.
Yeah.
I did not want a Craven movie. I did not want a Morbius movie.
Did you want a Han Solo movie?
Okay, that one I was I would be open to.
See, here's the thing. It's like I could totally see them ending the movie and they reintroduce some of those characters from the Knuckles show at the end. Like what was I can't even remember their names, man. The two that were trying to kidnap Knuckles in the TV show. What were their names? I don't remember their names. And
Kid Cudi and the other girl.
Kid Cudi, that's what it was. Kid Cudi and the
That
lady
was-
with the Uma Thurman haircut from Pulp Fiction. Yeah.
exactly.
So I could totally see them like leaning into that, like leaning into the human characters and, just kind of represent like, oh, there's a whole multiverse and there's several other characters out there. And maybe they might have a picture of Amy or Silver or Rouge or something that's like, I don't know, really tiny. And then they introduce like, there's this whole group of like people we found. And so this way it pleases some of the fans who are Amy fans, who are Silver fans, Metal fans, whatever. That's my guess. Is what the direction they're going to go in. I want to see if I'm right about this. I get brownie points, or I don't know. I get some kind of points, internet points.
I'll
But
make you
that's my
cupcakes.
guess.
How's that sound?
What's that?
I'll make you cupcakes. How's that sound?
Cupcakes. All right, sounds good to me. What kind of cupcakes? Make it red velvet. That's my favorite.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, I think that's most logically the direction they're going to take it in because I imagine we're probably, if we're going to get a season 2 of Knuckles, if that becomes a thing, we'll get more of Wade. I mean, mind you, I'm slightly rolling my eyes and I'm slightly excited because I did not hate Wade. I did not hate that character. I enjoyed Knuckles relatively,
Well, see, here's the funny thing, and when we eventually get to the Knuckles series, and we'll fully lay into it. Probably, maybe we'll give the fans a year to heal from the original airing. But the Knuckles show, I think a lot of people. How do I want to say this? It's like it's not great, but it's not terrible. And I'd border say it's not even
yeah,
good,
that's pretty
but
fair.
it's not. But it's not. It's not the worst thing in the world. I think a lot of people were thinking that this show broke into their house, kicked their dog, shat on their carpet, and then went to go
Deleted all
club
their
some Navy
porn.
SEALs. Exactly. um, and again, I go back and I think Wade and Knuckles are by themselves are not a bad duo. They play off each other really well. There's a scene in episode 2 which I think may be one of the best scenes in the entire show, and it's the two of them talking. But here's the problem with the show is that it gave us a lot of superficial characters. The mom was fine. The sister was just there was no point to having her there. Like
I didn't hate the sister. I know some people really despised her. So
I thought she was the worst character in the show.
okay,
Like
that's fair.
yeah, I just it's just she did nothing for me. Like her jokes were bad. Everything about her was bad.
Okay.
But and I feel like if they were to do a sequel to Knuckles, I think there are some positive things you can take if you kind of withdraw some of the Wade extra characters. and more focus on characters adjacent to Knuckles and have Wade and Knuckles interact with them. And again, budget withstanding, because, we got budgets and whatnot. Like, I really liked Christopher Lloyd's Pachacamac. It's not exactly how he was in the games,
Yeah.
but he's kind of interesting. Like, it's kind of Doc Brown, Obi-Wan Kenobi, who somehow likes the Mets, even though he's some kind of ghost. It's like, okay,
Knuckles, you gotta help
in the
Wade bowl.
exactly. It's like,
Okay.
hi, I'm Patrick Kamak. You might know me as a war criminal in the video games, but here I'm trying to get Knuckles to teach him how to bowl. Or maybe I am a war criminal. Or maybe I am. I don't know. Like, I feel like there's some fun stuff with him where you can do more with the Akenda history, because it feels like if you go from movie 1 to movie 2 to movie 3 and into the Knuckles things regarding the Knuckles show, it does feel like there's some inconsistencies and almost to the point of contradiction.
Okay.
Or, like, it feels like Patrick Kamak is an unreliable narrator.
Yeah,
Like,
that's fair.
and it's like, okay, well, we saw like the echidnas attack Knuckles and Longclaw, but
Uh-huh.
then, and then Knuckles says, "Oh, I lost everything that day when they went out to fight Longclaw." But then in the show they say, "Oh, the owls attacked the echidnas and they all wiped each other out." It's like, well, Longclaw was the only
Wait,
one.
was that in the show? I don't even remember.
It was during the it's during the big dream, LSD sequence where he pretends he's in the Knuckles onesie.
So they did a Star Wars episode 2 with us where like they're having a conversation about like all the great stuff they did and they talk about it in the elevator and they don't show us any of it. It was one of those?
Well, yeah, it's like he's like, to understand Knuckles to be a warrior, you have to live Knuckles' life, and that's when he does the whole, I will find the flames of disaster, and they
Okay.
do, he fights Iblis. It's
Oh yeah, that's
did
right.
say it
That
was
was
good.
underwhelming. But
I
all right.
actually love that part.
All right. I mean, it's just I didn't even for somebody who's not like familiar with what Iblis is or what's an Iblis, it's just sort of like it's lost on people. It's like you should have an introduction to this character. Don't just have it like a throwaway gag. Anyway, whatever. Um yeah, I agree with everything you say. Um there was one other thing I wanted to talk about, unless you wanted to lay this to rest. Is there more you
No,
wanted to
I'm
say
I'm
about that? Uh
Friday. Yeah, let's go. What's the next thing?
the last thing I wanted to talk about was the material that was released before this game came out. You know, the manga and the 2 episodes or 3? Is it 4? How many is it? Is it 3?
It's three. We talked about the first one, and then they released the second and the third one.
Right. First one, really great sound design. Second one, I love the way Rouge types on the keyboard. That was the best part for me. I just thought, like, man, that's so cool. I want to just have Rouge in my house just typing on a keyboard. The way she types, ooh, that's hot. I don't know why. I'm not sure why that was the best part. Does she? Let me ask you this, Malzilla. Does she type in the game? She's like the best
No.
typist. Oh man. I could watch her all day. I should just have that as my background. Anyway, I digress. What was the third one? The third one was like more Rouge typing, and they invited. Oh no, that was the second one. They invited him to Sonic's birthday because that
Yeah.
ties into the Generations thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what are your takes on these? I mean, you already know my take.
Um.
I
Yeah.
already told
I
you mine.
enjoyed them. I enjoyed them. Number two was fun. It was fun to see Omega, because Omega is like one of my favorites. I mean, I love Team Dark. I think the three of them, Sega's like, oh, Team Dark's not a real team.
Yeah,
They're
what's
just
up with
whatever. I'm
that?
like,
Like,
I don't
what?
know. The three of them, work really well together and they really bounce off each other really well. I posted this in our Discord, but if you got the PS5 version of Sonic X Shadow Generations, they released kind of the storyboard version of all three episodes together, and there's some different scenes and some like Omega got like a lot of his lines cut. He had a line in episode 3 where he tells, Shadow that when they're about to go fight that mech, it says, "Let's ruin their night." And it's like it was really fun. It was really good. Rouge, they had to slightly change the dialogue between Rouge and Shadow. It's like, "I'll help you if you go to Sonic's, birthday party." And Shadow goes, "Oh, why?" And it's just kind of like it's like because it'll be hilarious. They know how to push each other's buttons, but it's in such a fun way. 3 was fine. It got really anime music video at the end when they put in the little song and his shadows blasting off the space. I'm like,
I got
there's
really
almost some
anime.
like I almost wanted like I'm like, if we swap this out for like I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith, we're pretty much getting into Armageddon territory of, you know, angst. But it was really good. I thought the animation was really well done. I mean, I would say those things were really short because I think altogether they're only like 15 minutes. But it
Mm-hmm.
probably cost Sega like at least maybe like $1 million a minute with how good it was done. And I think it adds credence to the opinion that we really need more animated Sonic TV shows, movies, because I think you can do so much more than with the live action CG hybrid films.
Yeah, they were fun. I enjoyed them. Um,
I enjoyed them too.
okay, this is one thing I wanted to bring up too. It's kind of weird with Shadow because Shadow's the only real Sonic character that has an origin story, opposed
It is
to
really weird. I mean, Omega kind of has one.
really.
Yeah, because like that was his whole thing is that he was locked. Eggman locked him away, and that pissed him off, and that's why he wants to kill Eggman. Um,
I don't remember that, but all
but
right.
at Sonic Heroes, you didn't play the game, or
I did
did you
play
play
Sonic
Sonic
Heroes. I
Heroes?
don't remember that.
That was the whole opening of the Team Dark story.
Was it? I have
Like
no
Rouge,
memory of this. Okay.
I'll send. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
All right.
But yeah. But the majority of the characters, and especially Sonic, don't really. They have the loosest form of origin stories, like, and they're
Oh
never
yeah.
really explained.
Very loose.
Shadow, on the other hand, is the inverse, where his whole thing is his origin story. His story is basically his defining character trait. It's like Batman with his parents getting shot.
Yeah, exactly like that.
I'm making a lot of Shadow Batman jokes, and let's put it this way:
Or a
for the next couple
Shadman
years,
joke, if you may.
uh, minus 10
God.
internet points.
Yep. I probably lost 200 just with that joke.
Yeah.
I was one thing I was gonna say because Shadow's the only real one that like probably has some familiarity with some fans. That it's a story that they could repeat. Um,
Hmm.
that they could add like another, dare I say, retcon to. Because now I want to talk a little bit about the manga. Have you read it?
Yes.
Or at least I'm not sure how many.
Um,
It's like a serialized thing. It was. Did they say how many issues it was going to be, or how many editions?
they didn't, and I'm a little, and I have questions about how long it is because, like, it's really weird because it's like it feels like much like the animated show, it's like a tie-in, promotion for the game. Um, you know, it runs off a lot of the same notes that Ian was given. The white space, the larva that was in the on the arc that you know was doing all that fun stuff, like, that made you think like, oh yeah, that's, I'm this ugly creature and yada yada. So, they're not exactly contradicting one another, but at the same time, you can also kind of see that there are differences, and like there's a character that they introduce in that second chapter that has nothing to do with the game at all.
Well, I want to talk about that, but yes, go on.
Yeah, it's like even some of the stuff that he talks about is, there's Shadow has one offline, or a one offline where he contemplates, because when he realizes that Maria and Gerald are in the white space and these are versions before they died, he contemplates like, should I tell them what's in in store for them so they could prevent their fate? Kind of, Doc Brown, Marty giving Doc Brown the note to you know, save the day,
Mm-hmm.
or, save him in the, prevent him from getting shot, because if you watch, remember in original Back to the Future, the present Doc Brown gets killed by the terrorists in the opening, couple scenes, and
Right.
then he has to go back in time, and he meets up with the old Doc, and he doesn't want, Doc to die, so he kind of gives that note to him saying, "Hey, let's not die." Even though they talk so much about like maintaining the space-time continuum,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So you get a little bit of that in the game, where like Gerald says, "Hey, you shouldn't talk too much about the future. We don't want to like change it." And of course, I think Shadow kind of, he doesn't. It's not exactly a dialogue, but Gerald also then responds like, "Oh, so you've met a time traveler," in reference to Silver, because Silver's whole gimmick is he's trying to change the future. So
Hmm.
you get that, and in the manga, Shadow's like, his kind of Shadow wakes up in the white space, and he's kind of trying to
All
figure
right.
out
Well,
what's going on.
stop. What is the
Uh,
white space?
It's kind of this little, area that, time has stopped. It's kind of like
Oh,
the
okay.
void, kind of in, outside of time and
Is
space.
this an
It's like,
'06 thing?
no, this is all Generations. This is all the stuff from Sonic
And they
Generations.
refer to it as the white space.
Exactly.
Okay. Continue.
Yeah. So so the story goes is that, in the Korokoro manga, Shadow wakes up and he encounters this weird little bat thing. And, it kind of taunts him with,
Yeah.
this
This is
is
the
a weird,
character you don't
or
like, right?
yeah, it's just kind of a weird addition to the story, where it's basically, he says, in this white zone, in a, this area that's outside of time and space, you can change history, change time. And it's basically, it's obvious that, Shadow's trying to save Maria from getting shot. So, you get that idea of, he's saying, "Hey, if you listen to me, you could save Maria." And it's like,
Okay, let me
it
ask you
seems that's
something. This
uh,
character, where does it rank in terms of annoying for you? All the way from Bokun to Chris Thorndike to Wade.
it's in the Bokun level.
Okay, well, where do you rank Bokun in terms of Chris Thorndike and Wade?
Okay, of the four, Wade is the best.
Of course, I agree with that.
Uh, um, like, here's the thing with like, no, okay. Of those four, okay, maybe Bokun's the worst.
That's what I was gonna say.
Just because I just, you know, I didn't quite get his whole purpose. Like with Chris, yes, Chris was dumb, but it's I could understand why he was dumb. I could understand, a lot of the things where it's like he's also at the end of the day he's still like a 10-year-old kid. And in season 3 when he's an adult, he's an adult but he's back in his kid's body, he at least he acts responsible for the most part.
Hmm.
Like Chris is pretty insufferable in his first 2 seasons because he's a dumb kid who just yeah. Um this little bat again, it's hard to judge him after one chapter, but it's just like this character is just here for no reason at all other than to
Well, I know
just
why he's
because
there, but go on.
okay. Well, again, it's just like he's not in the game, and his whole like thing that it ends this that chapter on that cliffhanger is like, oh, you can save Maria and Gerald from dying, yada yada, and it's like that has no actual like plot relevance in the game at all. So what's unless this is supposed to be kind of like a side story to that, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of confused.
Well, I have something to say about this. Is that your
Fire away.
spiel? Is that your take?
That's my cake.
Okay. Let me preface this with saying, because I love my prefaces. Um, did you ever see the movie Hudsucker Proxy with Tom Robbins
Nope,
or Tim Robbins? Excuse me, Tom Robbins is an author. No, you never saw it.
never heard of it.
Okay. It's a Coen Brothers movie. If you like the Coen Brothers, where there's this scene where Tim Robbins he goes up to his boss and he shows him something he's been working on for years, for decades, right? Or maybe not decades, but for years. And what he shows him is a perfect circle, like a perfect circle, because they say that somebody who can draw a perfect circle is insane, right?
Hmm.
And he says, you know what? This right here, this is going to change your life. And you know what it is? And he says, it's for kids, you know? Do you know what that is? This perfect circle that he gives him?
I don't.
It is a hula hoop, right?
Ah,
So, looking at this new character, what's its name?
I don't even
Not
know its name.
Bokun, what?
The little bat.
The Little Bat. I don't know if it has a name yet. The Little Bat. To me, first off, not relating to Hudsucker Proxy, but I do see, like, what is it? The people who are responsible for the quote unquote manga, or who, make the trains run on time, quote unquote. They're sort of like, well, the shadow stuff, it's a little dark. Why don't you make the stuff, for kids? And
It
that's
is.
that's what this is. It's just sort of like, well, it's too dark. Add something in there for kids, Add a Dulcie, add an Antoine, right? Because it's just too dark. Make it like, I don't know, make it like, put some fluff in it. And that's what I see with this whole thing. I mean, to me, it's like, whatever. I mean, for you, I know you're not a big fan of this character, but for me, it's like, it brings me to the other end of the story. I find this white space stuff, what you're just talking about, interesting. But um, to me, it's like you with the cutscenes where the references you can overlook them, but for me, I can overlook this this little dumb character that they're trying to string a story together, to get them kiddies to get through it. The Jar Jar Binks of it all.
Okay. Okay. Fair. Fair. Fair.
Would you say this character's better than Jar Jar Binks though?
No.
No. Oh shit. Okay. All right. Wow. That's
And
a pretty low bar. All right.
I say this because I've watched a lot of Star Wars media that had Jar Jar Binks after the Phantom Menace,
Okay.
and they did some interesting things for him. Like, believe it or not, Jar Jar is still alive at like during the Galactic Civil War. but he's like a homeless guy on Naboo who juggles. He's like a panhandler. Like everyone knows that like this is a guy who was a hero. He was this, he was this, but he was also the senator who gave, Palpatine his emergency powers, and now he's, Palpatine's the emperor and he's a tyrant. So it's like, you fucked us over, Jar Jar.
Okay.
But yeah, random aside. I don't think Jar Jar Binks was on our bingo card for the Sonic podcast, but
No,
yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, like what characters in modern media, or not just modern media, any media, do you rank as the most annoying? Like, get this character out of my face, annoying. I'm guessing this bat
I
fits
would,
on there.
I don't hate the bat. I'm trying to figure out why the bat is there. Like what
Oh no, no,
is
no!
like
It's purely there as a vehicle. It's a plot device. It totally is
Oh
there.
yeah,
I mean, unless they
yeah.
decide to do, it's the same thing with Bo-Katan. Like, he has no position to be in the show. I mean, tell me I'm wrong, but to me, it's like he's only there to like bring some levity to Sonic X, I guess, supposedly because they needed it. I don't know. I'd have to watch the show
Here's
again
the
to figure
thing.
that out.
Well, the thing is like because it's like robot. Eggman in X has those two other robots.
Yeah,
But
right. Why don't you use them? I guess they can't
exactly. Why
fly.
does
They
he
can't
need that?
fly. They're not mobile enough. They need something more
Or
annoying.
I guess so. But yeah, I'd say like one of the worst characters I've encountered recently, I would say is Wanda Whipple. I did not like her
Okay.
at all.
All right. We've come
She
full
is,
circle.
I think, to me, she is the worst Sonic character.
Wow. Okay.
There are Archie characters that are much more that are better than her.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it's basically if there's the negative Z tier of characters, it's basically her and Dulcie's abusive dragon boyfriend from Archie Comics. And the only reason he's there is because he's
Wow.
abusive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like putting him anywhere else would be almost like he's there on principle because he's an abuse. He's an abusive partner, domestic violence.
All right. All right.
Like even as a bad guy, he's yeah. But wow, we are this is a hodgepodge of shit.
No, I
And
think this is a fruitful conversation, and be glad that you stuck around for 2 hours to get all the way down here. I mean, maybe I can give you an award of some kind if you made it all the way here. I don't know. The special code today is bacon cheeseburger. Next time you see me in person, say the words bacon cheeseburger, and I know that you made it all the way to the end.
well, I think that's. Do you have anything more to say, or I think we've chatted for
I think
a couple hours
we've
now?
got everything. I thought everything. Because we've been away for a little bit. I think I've gotten everything I wanted to say about the Shadow game. I'm not sure when I'll play it or if I'll play it.
You should
But
stream it.
I do look forward to the new manga. I will read that. I want to see where
I
they're
still
going
think
with
you
it.
should stream it. I still think you should stream it because you've been
All
streaming
right.
Silent Hill. If you haven't been watching Radrey streams, you should. Um, I know I'm still working on my next batch of Sat AM reviews, so I'm still working on that.
Yeah, I need to
I
look at
I
that too.
definitely speaking of IDW, we did have the annual come out. I have a lot to say on it, and I think people are going to be interested what I have to say, but that's a little too much for this episode, so we'll save that for another time. So I have thoughts,
Wow.
and I think they're going
Okay.
to be entertaining thoughts.
All right. Huh. I see. Uh. All right. Um. Yeah. Yeah. To do plugs. Yeah. I do stream every now and then on Twitch. I've been getting back into the streaming thing because now I finally have my house in order to a certain degree. I Malzil, what I'll end up doing is I'll probably just play Shadow the Hedgehog because I kind of want to finish that one. It's kind of like, it's one of those that's like, I want to finish that. I know it's like you could argue that it's a sunk cost fallacy, that you're ruining your life by playing this game. But to me, it's like, I don't know. It's like watching somebody play versus you playing it and experiencing it for yourself. It feels, you know, more satisfying. I get the more
Uh-huh.
visceral experience. I don't really prefer I kind of feel like a voyeur, kind of, watching other people play. Mind you, I do like watching other people play video games from time to time, but I do really prefer, getting the experience myself. So I'll probably stream that one. That's because that's what I want. I want to get up to this damn point. I really do. I want to
If
have
we
the
get
full experience.
500 likes on, if
I'm
we get
not getting
500
500
likes on,
likes, but go
well,
on.
I'm saying
Yes.
if we get 500 likes on this video, Radrey will stream Shadow 05.
Yeah. I'll wash your dog. I'll go to your house. I'll pay your bills. But we got to get 500 likes.
We're gonna
So
get 500 likes.
those are the rules. Them's the rules.
Them's the rules. Um,
All right then. Is
yeah,
there
I
anything
mean,
you want to say before we go? Or is there
yeah.
more?
Again, just the following plugs again. Follow us on Blue Sky. Follow us on Twitter. Join the Discord. We're posting all kinds of memes. We're having good chats, and yeah,
I guess
come
the only
hang
thing I
out
have
with
to
us.
say is, I don't know, the same thing Tom Cruise said at the end of that movie, Magnolia. I'm silently judging you.
All right, folks. See you around, coasters.
Bye.
Let's do it to it.